Hey everyone, welcome back to my live writing test series. We'll write a brand new essay in response to this week's newest IELTS Task 2 question. Alright, let's go. Some people think that children should be taught at school how to become good parents. Do you agree or disagree? I think that's a pretty good question and I have just the right ideas for it. But of course, when you read a question, you might have a lot of other questions pop up in mind. That's okay. I don't think you should be too anxious about the kind of content that you're going to write because, a lot of times the journey can kind of help you come up with the right things as well. But that's not to discount the importance of having a good reading habit or working on your language skills. Just the other day, we had a request from someone who wanted to join in on our courses, and so I gave him an assessment, and, well, unfortunately, his score was a 5, so we couldn't realistically accept someone with a 5 because that tells us there's language skills issues. So if that sounds like you, please make sure you work on language skills, because what I'm doing is really just telling you what kind of exam skills you need to work on. They will help you, but there's a limit to, how high you can really reach with just language skills or just exam skills. Okay, well, enough about that. So, okay, what's the first thing I need to do? I think I'll write my introduction first. I don't think this is a good idea. I think that, no one should be allowed to become parents willy-nilly, but that's an argument for another day. So let's see, first I need to write some kind of a background statement. So some people think children should be taught at school to become good parents. Okay, well, this is an interesting one. What can you say? Can you write about parenting? You could. Can you write about just children? Probably not, but maybe about the importance of careful parenting? Yeah. Parenting is, without a doubt, and I'm going to put in my commas here. So parenting is, without a doubt, one of the world's most difficult jobs, which isn't made any more easier by the unarguable fact that every child is unique and there is no blueprint that can be successful due to the diversity naturally found amongst human beings of all. Never mind. Okay, that's a good one. That's good enough for my background statement, and then I need to express my opinion. It is therefore necessary for us to understand that parenting is not a skill that can be taught. It's not something you can open a book and read about. You have to experience it. And yes, there is so much trial and error involved that you really shouldn't expect perfection. It's just not gonna happen. And of course, you have good intentions. You want to do the best, but you will fail. Let's accept it. So it's necessary to understand that this is not a skill that can be taught taught in an institute or through the use of books. It is necessary to understand that this practical skill is not something that can be taught in an academic environment. Now, I understand what you're probably thinking. What is she saying? This is too complex. I can't write that. You don't have to. You can write a simpler version. I'm just suggesting an ideal. So it's necessary to understand that this practical skill is not one that can be taught in an academic institute. Because what's a school? A school is an academic institute. I'm not trying to use synonyms. I'm just saying that this is a practical skill. You cannot teach it within the four corners, of a rigid academic place. It has to be a lived experience. Okay, then I'm going to generate my it's necessary to understand that this practical skill. Okay, there we go. That's done. I just have this habit of checking my work. You should too. Too often we see people who never really read their work. They write and they don't really think that, yeah, I should check my work for errors. Maybe I'm not, a perfect wordsmith after all. That thought never crosses their mind. That's not the best thing to do. Of course, you have to be very careful with writing. Okay, so I'm going to write my main idea 1. What's my first reason for saying that this is not something you should teach in school? I think that school is for more important things. I also feel like it's wrong. You can't just assume that everyone's going to be a parent, especially nowadays where more and more people are choosing not to bring life into the world. So I feel very strongly about forcing children to learn something that they're not sure they're going to use. Like math for me was useless, I'll be honest. I mean, of course I can, I'm not stupid. I can add stuff and subtract things in my mind just fine. But I mean, I'm not doing like 6-digit calculations mentally. I'm using my calculator, so it was useless for me, to be honest. And so I will really feel strongly about not really wasting their time, because I mean, that child grows up and decides, hey, I don't want to be a parent, it's just not my thing. Then I mean, you wasted their time. Like, why is it okay to waste children's time? Why is that acceptable? It shouldn't be. Anyway, that's like going kind of off topic. So, but yeah, children should only be taught skills that will objectively be important in later life. I don't think that every single person needs to learn about, let me think of quadratic equations. I don't even know what that is, but I remember the theme because that's what we were taught in 7th grade. Do I remember any of it all these years later? I remember nothing. 0%. So, I mean, what is going on? Children should only, yeah, of course I have to write B here. See, that's why you have to read your work. So children should only be taught skills that will objectively, taught. Maybe I can say children should only learn about things that are absolutely necessary. You can objectively say that you should learn how to add numbers. Everybody should. I mean, that's just, that's inarguable. You can say that everybody needs to be taught grammar in their language or in whatever, popular language. That's important. You're going to talk to people, and what? You're going to talk to them. How are you going to talk to them? So some things are important, and those things must be taught. But things like forcing a child to learn art if they have no interest, forcing a child to learn high-level complex math when they have no interest, no desire, and when you don't really know if they're going to go into a field where that's required, I think that's really just a special kind of torture. But anyway, I'm not going to use that word, obviously. So that's my first main idea sentence. It's an incorrect presumption. I think assumptions about what children may or may not require, this is only something maybe a parent could decide what their child should learn since they have a greater investment, but the school, a detached institute, I think that's just not really right. I might change the main idea if I feel like it, but for now it looks fine. Okay, and the next one, let's think about this. And another thing was possibly something about honoring their choices. I don't know. Yeah, every child is different. I've already said that though, right? Every child is unique. But yeah, okay, I can rephrase that. So, no two children or parental experiences will or can be the same. There's no fixed way of dealing with situations. Some things you just have to learn as you go. And now I'm gonna write my sporting ideas. So, for example, basic math and language skills, always useful. But teaching them something useful, obviously in the labor force, right? When you grow up and get a job, so only teach them things useful for the labor force. Anything else they can do it themselves, or their parents can invest in that, right? In later life is maybe a bit vague. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna keep it that way. Always useful. Child may grow up and decide not to be a parent, right? And what else? Yeah, okay, so my problem with this main idea is that it is maybe a little bit too specific. I think this is a good one for sure. I can just fill this one up first. No two children are the same. I mean, children in a family, different experiences even with the same parents. And one's parenting style depends on your temperament and values. Deeply personal. It can be because of your social values, moral values, religious values, cultural values. You cannot say that. I mean, for example, it can be, again, there are so many cultural differences. Yeah, that's my third point. Cultural differences. So what is acceptable in a culture may be considered weird or strange, maybe even illegal in others. So who are you to say do this and don't do that, right? Sounds strange. And again, no country is really that homogeneous. The cultures are all blending everywhere. So, you can't really say that this is okay, this is not okay. Unless, of course, you live someplace that's very culturally harmonious and homogeneous. But that's rare, as I was saying. So this is good. This one I'm not too sure. My main argument is they might, grow up and, it will just be a waste of their time. So, with parenting, they may grow up and decide not to have kids, and then not appropriate to waste time. Just because they're kids doesn't mean you don't value their time. This time could be spent on more useful things, maybe, for example, instead of, having children study one more subject, why not give them things like remedial lessons for whatever they're struggling with in school, right? Let's say they're studying some kind of language and they're struggling there. Why not give them more time to work on that instead of saying study this, study that, and there's 10 more subjects to study? Ridiculous. I'm not too happy with this. I think I'm gonna keep this my first one, so I'll develop this and maybe I'll think of something along the way. It's actually perfectly fine. I'm just nitpicking, but that's what I do. So I'm gonna add I'm not gonna add my transitions. I'm just gonna start with writing this. So let's see. No two children or parental experiences will or can be the same. The most crucial factor. Yeah, I'm gonna look at these ideas. I think this is more wide, this is more specific, and this is the most specific. So, well, I don't know. I think this is more personal though. The most crucial factor to consider is that even within one family, children of that family will report children experience their parents differently despite having the same mothers and fathers. Due to the fact that children I mean, you have to handle everyone differently, right? But if every child has his or her own unique, basically temperament, and has to be dealt with differently. Okay, and then the next thing, parenting style. Okay, another thing that cannot be overlooked is the fact that people's parenting styles are largely a factor of, or largely dependent on who they are as a person, their behavioral patterns, their own, what do you call that? Yeah, behavioral patterns. And deeply held beliefs or values, which can be quite hard to change and may not even be harmonious. And you know, a change, and any change or any suggestions may not even be ideal or harmonious for them. I mean, some people just deal with things in a way that's best for them, and you can't tell them, well, don't do this, do that for me. For example, if you tell me, just remember it, that's not going to work. I know who I am. I have to write things down, otherwise they don't exist. So everybody is, especially when they grow up to be 20, 30, you know, by the time they actually are ready to be parents, they already have a fixed personality. I mean, yeah, you're thinking about like teaching children, but you know, every child when they're growing up as well, they still have their own ideas about things. You can't say this is the only standard of behaving, right? I mean, if that was the case, if you could successfully train people in parenting, then you could also successfully train every single person to grow up and, you know, work for one type of work in one type of field. You get what I'm saying? One thing that cannot be overlooked is the fact that people's parenting styles largely depend on their own behavioral patterns, their temperaments. But I've already used the word temperament, so let's try not to repeat that. Just because it's such a specific word, you know. Maybe I can change it here. Every child has his or her own unique temperament. Every child has to be dealt with. Some people are just, I mean, some kids are just, they listen to whatever you say, but some are more questioning and they need a reason. They're not just going to accept whatever you say. And is that wrong? Not really. Everybody has their own personality. Yeah, personality, exactly. On their own personality. Great. Any suggestions? May not even be ideal for them. Okay, and the last one. Let's see. Cultural differences regarding parenthood and childhood are very far-reaching and difficult to really erase, you know, to get to change, to modify. They're kind of hard-coded. This is just the way I do things, and anything else feels weird or strange. So cultural differences regarding parenthood and childhood are very far-reaching and difficult to modify. Oh, but my main idea says something else. No two children or parental experiences can be the same. Okay, now I've hit a conundrum. Okay, this is perfectly relevant, so I'm just going to write an R next to it. One's parenting style, yeah, okay, that's also relevant. The last one, what am I saying with cultural differences? What did I think when I wrote this? No two children will or can be the same. Yeah, I don't think this is relevant. I'm gonna have to delete that. Let me see if I can come up with something else. Oh yes, as children age, they need to be dealt with differently. But I mean, obviously a course on parenting would kind of cover that. Well, I mean, But yeah, no, I think that's a relevant thing. So I'm gonna write. I think it's mostly, you know, you learn as you go. Change a lot, even from when they're 2 years to 7 years. So yeah, parenthood is largely learn as you go, sort of. Because the strategies that worked when a child is just, when, yeah, well, a child is just a toddler, okay, is, you know, an infant or a toddler, are very unlikely to work, still be effective when the child has grown up into an adolescent or even young adult. There we go. Okay. There we go. And then the final sentence. Any course would be sorely ineffective. There's just so much variety. And the next one, they should only be taught skills. It's a waste of their time, basically. It's a waste of their time. They could do remedial lessons. I think this can be my main idea, really. It's broad enough. And you can say many kids decide, child may decide. That's okay. Let me put that as idea number 1. And let's take this away. Okay, time and effort can be spent on more useful things. School really only should be for, it's a form of ensuring that you have a workforce which has like the basic amount of knowledge, okay? That they're ready for the workforce. That's basically what school is, training grounds for the future workforce. Might seem dystopian, but that's really what it is, you know. So schools are for training future workforce. Stick to that. Parenting is a very personal. You cannot dictate, do things this way and don't do things that way. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna change this. So, what was I saying? Children. What was I saying? Okay, not this. Why is it okay to waste? Okay, yes. So children should not have their time wasted by the. It is not appropriate to misuse or waste children's time in school by teaching them. Well, no, that's too much info. We'll keep it simple. It is not appropriate to misuse or waste children's time in school. Well, I could say one of the biggest indicators of failure of such a program would be that they may grow up and they may decide, I don't want to do this after all. So then what did you make them study for? You learn something in school, you take tests for it, blah, 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 for, a couple of years, and then you don't use it. It's a waste of time, zero benefit. So perhaps the most crucial, I've already said crucial factor. Okay, so perhaps the most important thing to understand is that as times have changed, especially in the modern world, people choose to become parents. There's no push, there's no social pressure. So the most important thing to understand is that, especially in the modern world, many people choose not to become parents. So such a course and the tests and exams that come along with it would be a complete and utter waste of many hours and hours, not just hours really, I mean many months of a student's precious time. And I think the next one can be about schools. Yeah, this ties in very naturally, so that's going to be number 2, and that's number 3. And what transition can I use here? Perhaps the most important thing to understand is that, especially in the modern world, many people choose not to become parents. Such a course and the tests and exams that come along with it naturally would be a complete waste of many months of a student's precious time. This time could very well, and should of course, absolutely should, be spent on more useful, let's say, activities, such as, remedial math or science, things that struggling children really need help with. Help with. Not just another, module with another set of exams, right? Let's read this. This time, the same time could, well, this is a reference word, so that's fine. This time could very well, and of course absolutely should, be spent on more useful activities such as remedial math or science lessons and things that struggling children really need help with, not just another module with another set of exams, another pointless module at any rate. And the last one, school is essentially training grounds for the future workforce. It is worth remembering that a school system is largely formal education. The goal of formal education is largely, and it's quite simply really, to educate a large mass of the population from a young age in the very, very, necessities of civil life. And to train them to be good workers and citizens. So they should stick to that. So any intrusion into personal aspects of life should not be tolerated. Such as parenthood. Okay, let's read. It is worth remembering that the goal of formal education is, I don't really need to write quite simply, is to educate a large mass of population from a young age in the very necessities of civil life and to train them to be good workers and citizens. So any intrusion into personal aspects of life or into personal life, because that's public life, right? You go to work, you have a job, whatever, that's public life, should not be tolerated, is unacceptable. And finally, I'm going to write, therefore, a child's time in school, a child's academic life needs to be carefully constructed. You have to ensure that they're doing things which are most useful. Needs to consist only of things most useful to them. I'm not using the wrong pronoun, them is just gender neutral. You can use they or them when you don't want to reveal the gender of someone or when you're not referring to anybody specifically. And the last thing we need is a conclusion. So, the conclusion, it is evident that, it is evident that. What is evident? Let's see, I'm going to restate my opinion. So, a course on parenthood. Skills would be an utter disaster, failure, or how can I, yeah. Okay, clearly I feel very strongly about this. So a course on parenting skills would be an utter failure because children go to school to learn useful things for public life, and parenting is not something which it's very subjective. Objectively useful things, very personal and subjective. It's not black and white, it's a lot of gray. Okay, and then I'm just gonna give some kind of advice. If children are to, let's see, my theme here is parenting, or, well, what would be best? What kind of advice can I give? I could give a warning, right? Maybe something like, if the school system starts to, intrude in people's private lives, there absolutely needs to be a revolt. Maybe if what can I say? Is it the school districts? If such absurd changes to curriculum are allowed, more and more parents themselves will start to, value homeschooling. It would be unsurprising. Okay, that's like a bit too much. If such absurd changes to curriculum are allowed, many parents would rightfully pull their children out of school and teach them at home. Why shouldn't they? I think it's good. I would prefer that. Okay, let's see our word count. Let's check. It's not as big as the last one, that's for sure. Okay, how can I check the word count? I have to drag this down. Okay, so this is, 446, not bad. Okay, I mean, it's a little bit on the bigger side, but that's all right. So, well, this was fun, a good question. And as you saw, I mean, I changed the main idea. I changed some ideas as well. This is why you have to, there's definitely a bit of multitasking involved. You're never really thinking of just one specific thing. You're keeping your question in mind, your opinion in mind, your main idea in mind. Everything has to work, together with each other. So let's read. I'm just gonna scroll, and you can pause the screen if you'd like to read. There we go. That's all for today. Check back on Saturday when I'll respond to a new speaking test, or maybe you can come back in a week to see me write another essay. See you later.